Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Steve Gill, a Republican analyst and now TV radio talk show host, and Larry Woods, Democratic analyst. Larry, we were talking about the situation with Rod Rosenstein, whether he might be fired or sort of forced to resign from his position, which oversees the Robert Mueller investigation. Do you expect him to be fired, and what impact will that have on the midterms?
I think President Trump is trying to convince Rosenstein to resign. I don't think Trump wants to fire. Well, politically, it would be a disaster for the Republican Party if President Trump fires Rosenstein.
Less a disaster if he resigns?
It doesn't help them any, but it's not a disaster. Firing him looks like a cover-up. His resigning looks like politics.
I think the problem, though, is that you have what's happened in the last couple of weeks makes it harder for Rosenstein when you have the FISA warrants, all the texts that have come out, that there really was a concentrated effort within the FBI, within the Department of Justice, to try to pull a coup and remove President Trump from office using bogus information, fake information, and with these top officials at the FBI and DOJ lying about it. And Rosenstein hasn't investigated that.
Let's move back down to Tennessee. We had the first debate between the two senatorial candidates this week. Anybody win, Larry?
There was no clear winner, but neither one made any major mistakes. Obviously, I think my guy Bredesen did the best, but there was no clear winner. On the other hand, there's great commercial ad opportunities out of that debate. You know, Marsha Blackburn said, I want more money for rural hospitals or emergency rooms, more money for the military, more money for infrastructure, and at the same time I want to cut taxes and balance the budget. That's just the same old political balderdash we get every generation. Nothing new there.
Except the tax cuts have produced an increase in federal revenue, and if we will use that revenue increase to buy those things we really need, rather than continuing to waste it on stuff that we don't need, then there is the money there to do it.
It is interesting to look at the polling that's come out so far. When you look at what the voters say in each particular poll, what's the most important issue, in the polls that the economy and jobs are the most important issue, the Republicans are doing better. In the ones where you see, and this is where Phil Bredesen did the best, that show that health care is the #1 issue, suddenly they're doing better. So it may depend on who gets their vote out. Is this going to come down to a turnout race, and who has the better get out the vote effort at this point that you're aware of?
I think in Tennessee it's a red state, so a turnout race helps the Republicans. We did a Tennessee Star poll a couple of weeks ago, and in a generic ballot, Marsha Blackburn as a Republican, Phil Bredesen as a Democrat, just a generic, don't put a name to it, a Republican should win that Senate race by 10 or 12%. Marsha in that poll was leading by about 3, so she's got a lot of room to grow with Republican voters to get a win.
Why isn't Marsha Blackburn doing better among Republicans in this deep red state? Why is she having to bring the president in twice, maybe more than that, to pull her across the line in a deep red state that obviously the fundamentals in this case ought to put her or any Republican candidate way ahead?
Phil Bredesen's been elected a couple of times statewide. He's a statewide known figure who did a relatively good job as governor, and people liked what he did as governor. A Senate job is a different job because you're voting more ideologically. She's not as well known in East Tennessee, which is where the base of Republican votes are. As they get to know her, which is why she's bringing in President Trump, you'll see those Republican votes move back towards her.
But Johnson City, that seemed to be an odd choice in the sense that you're having a rally up there to get him known, and I suspect they'll get almost as many people come over from North Carolina, West Virginia, and other states, and Virginia, to come in to see that. So how many Tennessee voters are actually going to be touched by that within the rally itself? Because a lot of the Trump people that are going to show up can't vote in the Tennessee election.
I think anytime you have a president come to Tennessee, the media coverage you'll get here with TV, in Knoxville with TV, statewide with TV, it's those eyes that are going to be more than the 20,000 that show up.
But if the idea is to introduce him in East Tennessee, why not go to Knoxville or Chattanooga?
I think they've done some things. They just had Mike Pence was over in Knoxville. Mike Pence was over in Chattanooga not long ago. Donald Trump is going to draw a crowd in Upper East Tennessee, where again, that's where the strongest part of Republican votes are.
But Marsha Blackburn's getting it wrong. You're right. Turnout is critical in this election. I agree with much about East Tennessee that Steve just said, but it's the turnout of the independents that's going to be critical. If Marsha gets a lot of independents for her to turn out, she'll win. If Phil Bredesen gets some turnout for him, he'll win. That's how close this election is. Therefore, bringing Trump in, other than money raising, doesn't really help Blackburn at this point.
Well, let's talk about the dueling Republican ads in this campaign. Marsha Blackburn came out with an ad that she's been running very heavily in her rotation that basically says, I'm a Republican candidate, I'm a Republican voter, I have voted for Phil Bredesen in the past, but I'm not going to do it this time. Bredesen almost immediately came out with his own ad full of Republicans who say, well, I'm a Republican and I'm voting for Phil Bredesen. Larry, you and I both old enough to remember when Democrats were the majority. Now we have to we're fighting over who the Republicans are going to vote for. That's a big switch over so many years.
Don't make me go back to ancient history. I mean, Steve's right. We've been a Republican state now for 20 years, 25 years, but the one fellow that has been able to reverse that trend, as Steve pointed out, is Phil Bredesen. He's won statewide twice. I think he'll do it a third time, would be my prediction.
What about the outside groups ads? The ads coming in from the majority leader? Mitch McConnell's got a group in here. The Koch brothers have an ad in here, the Majority Forward from the Democratic side. Both of them are running ads, particularly on the Majority Forward, Larry. They've gone particularly after Marsha Blackburn on the whole opioids issue. They're running that in pretty heavy rotation. Do they think that's a vulnerability for her?
The polling's very good on those issues, good for Mr. Bredesen. So yeah, that's exactly why they're running those ads so heavily. And you're right, there's a lot of outside money coming in. And, you know, as a person interested in politics, I always try to tune out the PAC ads and the outside ads, because those are people that don't have to face my neighbor the next day and justify what they've done. They're in California or wherever. We'll never hear from them again.
Steve, how well does the voters pay any attention to where the ads come from? They just see it on TV. They assume it comes from the campaigns, and they really don't know the difference if it came from an outside group.
I don't think they pay that much attention to it. I do find it ironic that, as you mentioned, the Democrat PAC ads are those that are funded by Chuck Schumer, who's put $3.5 million in ads attacking Marsha Blackburn. And Chuck Schumer voted for that opioid bill. In fact, it passed unanimously with both Republicans and Democrats, and Barack Obama signed it. So it's a little ironic that they're attacking her for a bill he voted for.
She said she was going to try to fix that. There were unintended consequences, but we haven't seen her do anything about it since.
They're still waiting for the federal regulators to come back with their report on what, if any, negative impact it's had, and in 2 years they haven't produced
anything. Why isn't she pushing back, though, publicly about that? She knows this is an issue in this campaign, yet she says very little about it on a proactive basis.
Well, I think the problem is it was a call of, do you make it less easy for people to get the medications they need? It's kind of like when I go into the pharmacy now and I've got to show my ID to get cold medicine because some people make meth. We need to make sure that we're regulating the bad guys and doctors that over dispense, but at the same time making sure that people who have a prescription, a legitimate one for opioids, can get them.
One more break, Larry, and I'll let you talk when we come back. We're talking politics now in Tennessee with the midterm elections coming up, the U.S. Senate race, and we'll get around to the governor's race as well after this break.